Paul is here, and he was had this time 10 minutes at this juncture. Senator Paul.
Madam President.
Senator from Kentucky.
We're currently borrowing $50,000 a second. We borrow $4 billion a day, and we're borrowing over $1 trillion every year. The situation has gotten out of control, and I think the situation of our deficit in our country threatens our country. And in fact, I think it's the #1 threat to our national security and our security as a nation is this overwhelming burden of debt. Many economists have said that this burden of debt is actually causing us to lose 1 million jobs a year. It crowds out private investment because we got to take care of financing this enormous debt. Amidst all of this, we have rules in place. There's a Budget Act that we've had in place since the 1970s that requires that this body put forward a budget. The problem is that we have no budget and have had no budget for 3 years. Now, you would say, how can this be when we have a law that says that the majority party has to have a budget, and yet we have no budget? They are in defiance of the law. Then if you come to us and you say, well, we want money spent on X item, we can't even do anything about it because there are no appropriation bills. If you don't have a budget, you don't have appropriation bills, you can't alter up or down the appropriation bills because we don't have a budget to go by. In fact, every bit of spending that we do up here is in defiance of our own rules because we're supposed to compare the spending bills to the budget, and we have no budget. Now, many of us have been promoting something new. This would be a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution because we don't seem to be doing a very good job balancing a budget. Now, you and your families, when you have less money coming in, you spend less money. Every American family has to do this. Why can't Washington simply spend what comes in? Shouldn't be that complicated. But they aren't obeying their own rules, so I think we need stronger rules. That would be an amendment to the Constitution that says you must balance the budget. We had a vote on it. 47 of us on our side of the aisle voted for it, and no one on the other side voted for it. Our balanced budget amendment to the Constitution would require that the budget balance within 5 years. In that vein, what our office has done is put together a budget that does balance in 5 years, and it actually, over a 10-year period, would reduce the deficit by $2 trillion. Ours is the only budget that will balance in 5 years and begin paying down the debt over 10 years. Right now, Congress has an approval rating of 11%. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that we aren't doing our job. We aren't passing any budget, much less a balanced budget. If people vote for our budget, we would balance in 5 years and begin paying down the debt. I think the stock market would be ecstatic to hear this. Now, how do you do this? In order to balance the budget, you have to tackle entitlement reform. Currently, Social Security is $6.2 trillion short of money. The taxes you pay in Social Security are less than what we pay out. Social Security is essentially insolvent. Now, you ask, well, how come my check keeps coming? Your check will always keep coming. As the bankruptcy grows deeper and deeper, your checks will come. They won't buy anything. You're already seeing this at the pump. Gasoline prices have doubled. Is it because gas is more precious? No, it's because the value of your dollar is shrinking. The value of your dollar is shrinking because we print up all this new money to pay for this massive debt. It is unsustainable, and one way or another, it's going to come to a head. Will it come to a head through the destruction of our currency paying for this debt? I don't know, but we certainly need a budget. Ours will be a budget that balances in 5 years. People say, why don't you compromise with the other side? We will, but they have to have a budget. If ours balances in 5 and the other side will promote one that balances in 10, compromise would be 7.5. But if the other side doesn't have a budget, or if the other side has a budget, the president put forward a budget, and we will vote on that too, his never balances. So we've got infinity for their side, and we've got 5 years on our side. How do you get halfway from infinity to 5 years? If you're going to compromise, they have to come to the table. We have to engage in a debate. Entitlements are 65% of the budget. They call it mandatory spending, and nobody wants to do anything about it. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, 65% of the budget. If you don't tackle entitlement reform, you can't fix it. We have a proposal on the table, Social Security reform. We fix Social Security. The way we fix it is we gradually let the age rise of eligibility to 70 over about 20 years, and we means test the benefits. Not on the current people, but on the next wave. My generation will have to wait longer. Why? Is it because we want to change things? No, it's because we're living longer. We all have a longer life expectancy, and then we had smaller families. This isn't anybody's fault. It's not Democrats' fault. It's not Republicans' fault. We just had a bunch of large families born after World War II. They're all retiring, and each subsequent generation had less children. It's a demographic fact. Combine that with the fact that we're living longer, you have to make changes. But we have a proposal on the table. We will fix Social Security. How do we compromise if the other side won't come up with a proposal? $6 trillion short. Social Security is $6 trillion in the hole. Medicare, $35 to $40 trillion in the hole. We have a solution. We will give every senior citizen in the country the same health care plan I have. The same health care plan that every senator and congressman has, we're willing to give it to them. And you know whose idea this was? Senator John Kerry from Massachusetts, a Democrat. We've taken his idea and put it forward, but we can't get anybody on the other side to talk to us. They've given up. It's an election year. They're not going to do anything this year. We didn't do anything last year. So we haven't done anything to fix entitlements. We've done nothing to fix Social Security, nothing to fix Medicare. How do you compromise with a side that has no proposition, that won't put anything forward? But we have a 5-year plan that balances in 5 years, and we fix Social Security. We save Social Security in perpetuity, which I laughingly say is a long time. We also fix Medicare. We save Medicare. Medicare is facing a $35 to $40 trillion deficit, and we're willing to save it. But the other side has to come to the table, and nobody's showing up to debate these things. No one is proposing any budget on the other side. No one is proposing any entitlement reform. In our budget, we save Social Security, we save Medicare, and we go one step further. We have tax reform that would help the country, would make it fair. Some on the other side say, well, let's get rid of all those loopholes for special interests. We do it. We do a flat tax, 17% for all businesses, 17% for all personal. You get to deduct your kids and your house, and that's it. No other deductions, no other special interest exemptions, no other special credits for any special business or special enterprise, a flat 17% for everybody. You'd see a boom in this country like you've never seen if we would do it. What would compromise be? Maybe the other side wants 25% and I want 17%. We go in the middle and we do 22%. That would be compromise. But how do we compromise with the other side when there is no budget? There is no entitlement reform proposed from the other side. There is no tax reform proposed from the other side. How do we compromise if there is no other side? If the other side has decided not to show up this year, if this year is going to be a waste of time and everybody's going to just run for office, maybe we shouldn't be paid this year. Maybe you shouldn't pay your congressman. Maybe you shouldn't pay your senator this year if we're not going to have proposals from both sides. This means we should be talking about entitlement reform, talking about tax reform, talking about budgets, and there would be give and take. But the only way to get give and take in our country is people need to show up for the debate. We need to do our job. Why is there not a committee in Washington, not any committee? Why is there not any committee meeting every day on how to fix and save Social Security? Nobody's talking about it. There is no such committee. Why is there not a committee discussing Medicare reform? Meeting every day, Republicans and Democrats talking and figuring out how to way out of this. There is no such committee. Why isn't there a committee on tax reform discussing how we could make our tax code simpler and make it easier for people to figure out and make the rates lower so we could spur the economy? Every time we've lowered tax rates, unemployment is cut in half. When we had an upper rate of 90%, Kennedy lowered it to 70%. Unemployment was cut in half. When Reagan lowered the top rate from 70% to 50%, unemployment was cut in half. When Reagan lowered it again from 50 to 28, unemployment was cut in half. But we as a country have to decide that we don't want to punish rich people, that we don't want to go out and punish corporations. We work for these people. We want them to do better. The oil and gas industry employs 9.2 million people and pays $86 million a day in taxes. We want them to do better. Let's don't punish them with more taxes and regulations. Let's make their taxes lower and their regulatory burden lower so they can drill for more oil in our country and employ more people in our country. So these are the decisions we have to make as we go forward. We have a budget that can balance in 5 years. It's what our country needs. I think people would react, and the marketplace in particular would react in a tremendous fashion if we would move forward and vote for a budget. The Republicans will have 4 or 5 budgets presented, some of them that balance in 5, some of them balance in 8, some of them balance in 28, but we're at least trying. We're showing up and we're presenting budgets that would balance at some finite period of time. I tell people, if it's never going to balance, it shouldn't even be presented. If it's not going to balance in your lifetime, if you say it's going to balance in somebody else's lifetime, when somebody else is going to be here in Congress, you've abdicated your responsibility. We can do better than this. The American people expect us to do better than this. The American people expect us to show up and do our job. We will today vote on these budgets. And what I would ask the American people is look and see how your representatives vote. Look and see how your senators vote. Look and see whether or not your senators believe in balancing the budget. Or if they think, doesn't matter, we'll just print up more money. But realize if their answer is to just print up more money, if their answer is that deficits don't matter, if that is their answer, I want you to get mad, and I want you to get angry, and I want you to get even. Every time you go to the gas pump and you pay $4 for gas, I want you to know why your gas prices are rising. Not because gas is more precious, but because your dollar is less valuable. Your dollar is less valuable because of the massive debt we run and the irresponsibility up here that nobody's willing to tackle it. I want you to know that there are some on our side who are willing to make the tough decisions. Is it easy to stand here and say to the people in Kentucky and the people in America that the only way we can save Social Security is by letting the age of eligibility rise? Do you think that's really popular? Do you think I'm saying that to pander and try to get votes? I'm saying that because it's the only thing that will save Social Security, and it's the only thing that's going to save our country is we have to make difficult decisions. And so I think that's what needs to happen is people need to say, are you willing to make the tough decisions? Are you willing to stand up and say, this is how we would fix Social Security. This is how we'd save the system. This is how we would correct this deficit that's dragging us all down. One side is willing to do that. I'm willing to do that, and I hope that my fellow senators will today consider voting to balance the budget. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield back my time. Madam President, I yield back my time.
Madam President.
Senator from North Dakota.
Madam President, if we could put we are waiting for a number of senators who have sought time, and they'll be coming to the floor, and we'll hear from them momentarily. Let me just say, Senator Paul is sincere. One place I agree with him is that the country has to face up to our deficit and debt situation. As I indicated earlier, I was part of the Bowles-Simpson Commission. We agreed to and voted on significant reforms, spending cuts, but we also used some additional revenue to have a balanced plan. And I believe that has to be the test for any of the proposals that are made here. And as I see the proposals coming from our Republican colleagues, they flunk that test because they have no balance. There's nothing on the revenue side. In fact, there are deep additional tax cuts aimed at the wealthiest among us in all of their plans. None of the Republican plans has less than a $150,000 tax cut on average for people with earnings of over $1 million a year. Senator Paul's plan is truly a radical plan. He didn't mention a lot of the elements, but he has massive tax cuts for the wealthiest among us. He scraps the entire tax system, goes to a 17% flat tax. That is a massive tax cut for those of us who have higher income. Massive tax cut. I can tell you, it'd be a massive tax cut for my family. He also cuts discretionary spending, education, energy by huge amounts. I'll go into that. He cuts health care almost $4 trillion. Let's go to the next slide if we can in the interest of time. He replaces the current progressive system with a 17% flat tax. He eliminates the estate tax. Eliminates it. He eliminates taxes on capital gains and dividends. Eliminates them. That's, my goodness. You think about what that would mean. People like Warren Buffett wouldn't pay almost anything in taxes, the richest people among us, because he eliminates taxes on capital gains and dividends. But he's not so generous when it comes to lower income people. He raises taxes on lower income people by ending the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. He eliminates it. Let's go to the next slide just quickly. Perhaps most stunning, his answer to saving Social Security, not a dime of revenue, cut the benefits 39%. That's what Senator Paul has got before this body. Really? Is that what we should do? Massive tax cuts for the wealthiest among us and make up for it by cutting Social Security benefits 39%. That's the Paul plan. He increases the retirement age 3 times faster than the Fiscal Commission plan. And he shifts to something he calls progressive indexing for those earning above $33,000, which cuts their benefits even more deeply over time. Now, people, I respect his desire to do something about deficits and debt. But the answer is not massive tax cuts. Eliminate the estate tax, eliminate capital gains taxation, no taxes. Wow. Warren Buffett should send him a thank you letter. And cut Social Security 39%. I could go into the other details. He cuts energy dramatically. He cuts education. What's his education cut? I think we've got it there. We'll go into the specifics of that. Massive cuts so that we can have more tax cuts for the wealthiest among us, trillions of dollars, and then cut Social Security 39%. Wow. That's breathtaking. That's breathtaking. We'll see how many colleagues are going to stand up and support that in a vote later today. If Senator Durbin is here, thank him very much for his involvement. He has been not only served on the Simpson-Bowles Commission, but also served in the Group of 6 and has spent literally hundreds of hours trying to find a way on a bipartisan basis, working together to come up with a plan that's really balanced and fair to get us back on track and to save trillions of dollars on the debt. And I applaud him for it. He's shown enormous courage and also extraordinary energy in trying to get our country back on track. Senator Durbin.
My thanks to Senator CONRAD and
Senator from Illinois.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me just say that the retirement of Senator CONRAD from North Dakota is a great loss to the Senate and to the nation. We have only 6 or 7 months left to do something significant, and it'll be easier to do it when Ken CONRAD is with us, working with us, and I hope we can achieve it. And I also want to say, for those who have come to the floor over and over again to say, well, it's time for a budget resolution, it bears repeating that we passed the Budget Enforcement Act which is a law. A resolution is just that, a resolution passed by the House and Senate recommending our spending levels. A budget law passed by Congress, signed by the President, has the force of law, and it, in fact, is going to determine our spending levels for the next year. So the people who come to the floor and say, well, isn't it about time we had a budget resolution so we knew what we were going to spend next year? We do. We passed it on a bipartisan basis. In fact, the Republican Senate leader voted for it. So it isn't like it wasn't a bipartisan effort. It was all the way, and the President signed it, and it guides our spending. But let me speak for a moment about those thrilling days of yesteryear, as I used to say on the old radio serial. Going back to 2001, if you can stick with me for a minute, that was the last time the United States of America had a balanced budget. Who was president at the time? It was President Clinton, left that budget for President Bush. And that represented, I think, 2 or 3 successive years of balanced budgets. So I said to my staff, take a look at the last time our budget was in balance and take a look at today and compare spending and revenue between those 2 periods of time. I think the senator from North Dakota told me once that something like 19.6% of GDP in that year of balance was being spent, 19.6% was being raised in revenue, and there was the balance. Now we have drifted to the point where I think that spending is around 24%, is that close? And that the actual revenue is down to 14%. The 10% delta equals the deficit. But in specifics, what's happened in that period of time? And this, thanks to Senator Inouye, chairman of the Appropriations Committee, is a chart which kind of tells this story. I'll try to put it, I'm going to use your easel if you don't mind. Take a look. The blue line, of course, bar represents the spending and revenue in fiscal year 2001, last time we had a balanced budget, and the red bars represent the fiscal year we're in, 2012. And so I asked him to compare, and here's what we found. The security in there represents the, of course, military spending, primarily military spending. In the period of time since we were last in balance until today, we have seen roughly a 60% increase in military spending. Understandable. 2 wars and all the buildup that's been part of it, okay? 60% increase. Now let's take a look at non-defense spending. That would be everything from medical research, building highways or helping to build highways, education, basic health care and such. What has happened in real dollars since we were last in balance in that non-security discretionary spending? Flat. Zero increase. Zero increase. But if you listen to the debate over the last 2 years here, you would think it was all the increase that we've seen in our deficit is attributable to these non-security programs. Those are the ones we have just been cutting away at, and I think they represent some 16% of the budget. So we keep cutting away at all these programs, non-defense programs. They have not added to our deficit since we last were in balance. Now look at mandatory programs. Now mandatory programs, obviously Medicare, and programs like that have seen an increase of about 30%. 30% because yesterday 10,000 Americans reached the age of 65. Today 10,000 more, and tomorrow 10,000 more. And for the next 18 years, 10,000 a day. Boomers have arrived. And after paying into Social Security, Medicare, for a lifetime, they walk up to the window and say, now it's my turn. Understandable. So the demographics have been growing of those who are covered by these mandatory programs, and the cost has been growing right along with it, 30% increase. Now take a look at revenues. Compared to when we were last in balance, revenues have gone down 13%. Now, Senator CONRAD and I were on the Bowles-Simpson Deficit Commission, and 18 of us sat there for a year plus and listened to all this testimony about everything. And here's where we came down. He and I both voted for it. We believe that the premise of the Simpson-Bowles Commission is the right premise. Everything must be on the table. Everything. What do you mean by everything? Spending cuts must be on the table, both in the defense side and the non-defense side. In addition to that, we have to put the entitlement programs on the table. My friends, we can't ignore this conversation. We're, what, 11 years, 12 years away from Medicare going bankrupt? We've got to have a serious conversation about this. And we have to look seriously at the question of revenue. We cannot ignore the fact that we have seen a decline in the revenue coming into the federal government since we last had our budget in balance. And so we have to put all that on the table. And I added another part that fits right into the revenue conversation, the tax code. This is not holy writ. The tax code is a compilation of laws passed over a long period of time that take about $1.2 trillion out of the Treasury every year for deductions and credits and exclusions and special treatment. They asked us in one of these meetings in the tax code, what do you think is the most expensive provision in the tax code? Takes the most money out of the Treasury. And I said, well, mortgage interest, for sure. Wrong. The most expensive is the employer's exclusion of health insurance premiums. So imagine when we get into debate about tax reform, and the first item up is the biggest item up, employer's exclusion of health insurance premiums. Imagine that conversation. If we say your employer can no longer take the full deduction, what does it mean to you as an employee in terms of your out-of-pocket expense, in terms of your health insurance coverage? So I'm not going to suggest tax reform is an easy exercise. It's hard, but it has to be part of the conversation here. So here's where we come down. We're having an exercise today which is not invaluable. I mean, I shouldn't say not worthless. It is important. It is an exercise in discussing the budget. What Senator CONRAD has spelled out are different visions of things. What you find coming from the other side of the aisle primarily talk about more tax cuts, particularly to higher income people, in the belief that that's how you spark an economy and get it to go. I disagree with the premise. I think the way this economy moves forward is when working families and middle-income families have more spending power. I don't believe you can give more money to the richest people in America and expect the economy to take off. Also, you'll find that many of the entitlement programs, which now have become critical safety net programs, are victims of the budget resolutions that come to the floor. I cannot imagine what life would be like for 40 million Americans on Social Security with a 39% cut. Is that what Senator Paul suggests? 39% cut in Social Security benefits. Too many of these people are living on their Social Security checks and barely getting by. A 39% cut is cruel and unrealistic. I don't think it's going anywhere. And the notion from these others that we can just keep cutting taxes for the highest income categories, let me tell you, you'll never balance the budget doing that. Never. And if we don't balance the budget, we can jeopardize our economic recovery. We have a cliff that we're going to face on December 31st. It's a big deal. I can't remember a time that I've been in the House and Senate when so many things are going to happen on one day. But on December 31st, all of the Bush tax cuts expire on the highest income levels as well as lower and middle income levels. I think the 10% tax rate goes away, for example. The child tax credit is cut in half. All of these things mean more taxes for every American paying into income tax. Secondly, we are going to see the end of the payroll tax cut, the 2% cut that we've had for 2 years, the President put in place. I could go through the litany. The bottom line is this. We need to start that honest conversation about the deficit now. And we need to put something on the table ready to be discussed. The group of 8, there are 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, have been meeting a long, long time. We're trying to put together a bill, something that actually could become law. I don't think it's the last word, but it may be the first word in the debate. And if we can't get anything done before the election, let us hope that the day after the election we can put this on the table and say, here is our starting point. Let's solve the problem on a bipartisan basis, put everything on the table, do it in a thoughtful, balanced way. I think that's what the American people are looking for. They really are. They are beyond the charades of, oh, this won't touch me, let's go hit somebody else. I think everybody realizes we're in the soup together. But if we come out of this together, think about where we'll be. As other nations around the world are struggling to survive economically, I can go through the list in Europe, but you know it well, we don't want to put ourselves even close to that position. The debt ceiling. That expires December 31st or soon thereafter. And if we do not renew the debt ceiling, America will have defaulted on its debt for the first time in history. That is totally irresponsible. It is an invitation for downgrading of our credit rating and upgrading of the interest rates we pay and upgrading of the deficit we owe. I hope that the statements made by the House Speaker in the last couple days don't reflect the position of his party when it comes to the debt ceiling. That would be a totally irresponsible act in terms of our economy. I'll be joining Senator CONRAD today in voting against the budget resolutions come to the floor. But I will say this. I am glad that we're having this conversation. We need to have more of it, and we need to have a bipartisan effort, both parties, working to make sure that we deal with the current spending in a responsible way, and equally important, find a way to get past the cliff, the December 31st cliff, in a way that will build our economy and not take away from it. I yield the floor.
I thank the Senator. I thank him for his leadership. I thank him for the extraordinary effort he's made to help get America back on track. I thank him for having the courage to support Bowles Simpson and the group of 6 that's now a group of 8, and hundreds of hours that he has spent in negotiations, good faith negotiations, to bring both sides together so we actually get a result. Not the political charade that so often goes on around here, but serious solutions to serious problems. Senator Wyden, a very valuable member of the Senate Budget Committee, is here on the floor. No senator, I might say, has proposed more serious solutions to America's problems than Senator Wyden. And he's done it without the benefit of having a committee staff that he controls. He does it based on his own hard work and the work of his office staff. He has proposed major tax reform, major health care reform, and he's done it in a bipartisan way. In many ways, I think he's set an example for everybody in this chamber. Senator Wyden, how much time would you like?
12 minutes or thereabouts?
Yeah.
Well,
you got about 12 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, Mr. Chairman, without turning this into a bouquet-tossing contest, I just want you to know how much I've appreciated your leadership. And I also want to make sure people understand the record. And that is that if the Congress had passed the bipartisan proposal you put together on the budget, it was the CONRAD-Gregg proposal. As a Democrat, you joined Republican Judd Gregg. We could have forced in 2010 an actual effort to put together a comprehensive tax reform and spending agreement. As you know, I don't need to go over some of the history. Some of the sponsors of the proposal weren't even willing to go along. But I think it's important that the country understand that we've got to do this in a bipartisan way, and had you and Judd Gregg prevailed in 2010, we could have forced on actual spending reductions and tax reform bipartisan effort, and I sure wish we had proceeded with it, and as one who supported it, I still think that would have been preferable. Mr. President, before being elected to the Congress for 7 years, I had the honor of serving senior citizens. I ran the Senior Citizens Legal Aid Office. I served as the public advocate on our state's nursing home board, and I taught gerontology at several of our universities. What I enjoyed most was the personal contact I had with senior citizens as a voluntary board member of our senior nutrition program. It's known as Loaves and Fishes, and through it I could bring meals to seniors at their home on a number of occasions as part of the Meals on Wheels program. Now, Meals on Wheels is one part of government that truly understands the connection between the heart and the head. It touches the heart because I saw when you bring a nutritious meal to seniors, you can spend time visiting with them at home, and often they will tell you that you're the only visitor they will have during that day. And it causes you to use your head and a sharp pencil because you can see without Meals on Wheels, as sure as the night follows the day, some of those seniors are not going to be able to stay in the community, and they will end up needing institutional services. And those services are more costly, and of course, seniors will often be less happy with those kinds of institutional programs. And I bring up Meals on Wheels today, Chairman Conrad, because several of the proposals that are offered by colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they're not going to be bipartisan because they cut the part of the budget that funds Meals on Wheels substantially. In several instances, specifically, through our research, between 17 and 59% in just the upcoming year. Now, putting Meals on Wheels at risk like that just defies common sense. I've already indicated from a compassion standpoint alone, it warrants support. But even if Meals on Wheels doesn't grab your heart the way it does for me, it certainly ought to get the attention of your head, because it's the kind of program that lets seniors have more of what they want, which is to be at home at less price to the taxpayers. So it just defies common sense to not be bipartisan in terms of approaching something like Meals on Wheels. And I think what is common sense is what you, Chairman CONRAD, have touched on, and other colleagues, and that's tackling the big issues on a bipartisan way. And certainly when it comes to Medicare, that's what's needed. And I would only say, having worked in this area, we ought to start with the fact that we're looking at, and I'm not the first to describe this, a demographic tsunami. We are going to have, colleagues, for the next 20 years, 10,000 seniors turning 65 every single day. 10,000 seniors turning 65 every single day. And we have made a commitment in this country, fortunately, to those senior citizens. It is called, colleagues, the Medicare Guarantee. That is the commitment we have made to older people. It is a commitment to good quality, affordable health care. And if nothing is done, absolutely nothing is done, it is a commitment at risk. If nothing is done, the Medicare Guarantee is in peril. And my own sense is that Medicare, because it's already facing cuts with sequestration, as Chairman CONRAD has pointed out, Medicare, if nothing is done, will face a steady diet of benefit cuts and cost shifting until we do not recognize the Medicare Guarantee as it stands today. That's unacceptable to me. It ought to be unacceptable to every member of the Senate. And as Chairman CONRAD has noted, Medicare reform is going to have to be bipartisan. And the reason I believe that is that if it's not, much like we saw with health care reform, if it's done just on a partisan vote, the side that loses, as soon as the ink is dry on the signature of the passed bill, the other side will move to undo it or repeal it or radically alter it. I say the Medicare Guarantee is too important for that. And that is why I, with other colleagues, help of the chairman, colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I've been working to get bipartisan Medicare reform ready, teed up for enactment at the first possible opportunity. It's outlined on my website, Bipartisan Options for Reform, and I'm interested in working with every colleague here in the Senate to pursue it. Here's what it's going to take. First and foremost, it will take protecting the most vulnerable seniors, what are called the dual eligibles, seniors who are eligible for both Medicare and Medicaid. The protections for those dual eligibles must be ironclad. Unfortunately, a number of the offerings that we're going to see from colleagues on the other side not only don't ensure ironclad protections for these vulnerable seniors, the dual eligibles, but by block granting Medicaid, they put at risk the most vulnerable seniors, the seniors who need nursing home care that's paid for by Medicaid, and since Medicaid is a federal state program, By block granting it, you put at risk the most vulnerable seniors, and that's certainly not in line with what you'll see at my website that outlines bipartisan approaches that Democrats and Republicans can come together on for Medicare reform. The second part of Medicare reform is to ensure that you protect traditional Medicare where the government pays doctors and other providers for services, as well as private sector choices that have to offer at least as good coverage as traditional Medicare. And by doing that, you force traditional Medicare and the private choices to hold each other accountable. It's going to be pretty hard to protect traditional Medicare and its purchasing power with some of what we're going to see later this afternoon that actually proposes to end traditional Medicare within the space of 2 years. Third, Medicare reform, and we went into this in a very good hearing that was held in Chairman Conrad's Budget Committee, is going to require comprehensive consumer protection. And having been involved in this since the days when senior citizens, when I come to visit them, would bring out a shoebox full of health insurance policies, weren't worth the paper they were written on. It was a Medigap scandal that we finally fixed in 1990. I've seen how these rip-off artists try to exploit seniors. So at Chairman Conrad's hearing, we were able to talk about comprehensive consumer protections and specifically ensuring that any Medicare reform would have to have a strong risk adjustment program so that if, for example, any network of health care providers or an insurer took mostly healthy people, their contribution from the government would be far less than the contribution that would be afforded for a program that took a greater number of older people with health challenges. So I bring this up only by way of saying, Mr. President, I'm committed to bipartisan Medicare reform. I think Medicare is really a sacred ground. It can only be preserved and protected by ensuring that we take the steps, I've just outlined 3 or 4 of them here this afternoon, that ensures that we put seniors and their well-being before ideology and politics. Now, this afternoon, we're going to hear several alternatives offered by colleagues from the other side of the aisle that, in my view, doesn't do that, doesn't meet that test. In effect, we're going to be dealing with ideology rather than the kind of principles I've outlined here today that I think can win support from colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and people can see on my own website have attracted the support of influential Republican voices. So we've got a test to meet. It's a test that builds on a bipartisan approach to a program that is sacred, the Medicare guarantee, that if it's not, I would ask unanimous consent for 1 additional minute.
Without objection.
Built around a Medicare guarantee that must be protected and preserved. A number of the proposals we'll get from the other side this afternoon don't meet that test, but I just want colleagues to know that I'm committed to working with them to produce what America wants in this Congress, that is bipartisan Medicare reform that ensures that this very special program prospers in the days ahead. We're up to it. We're up to it if we build on the bipartisan example that Senator Conrad started years ago with Senator Gregg. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Thank the Senator. I thank him for extraordinary work he's done on the Budget Committee. I thank him for the extraordinary work he has done as an individual senator to propose bipartisan tax reform, bipartisan Medicare reform, and the kind of thoughtful solutions that we so desperately need. I see Senator Lautenberg is here. We're glad to have you. How much time would the senator like?
if I might ask recognition from the President that I am here and ask for recognition and permission to move ahead with my statement.
The Senator from New Jersey.
I just say to the Senator that Senator Alexander is scheduled to be here at 12:30 or thereabouts, so if the Senator could consume about that amount of time, we'd make this all work. Thank the Senator.
We'll give the Senator a good greeting.
Great. Thank you. I thank
Senator
the
from
Senator.
New Jersey.
Thanks. Mr. President, one thing we know is that a budget isn't just a collection of numbers. It's an expression of principles and priorities and direction. While I have the floor, I will take a moment to say to our friend and colleague from North Dakota, who's been one of the strongest chiefs of the Budget Committee. I sat on the Budget Committee for a long time. And I think it's fair to say, Republican or Democrat, the senator from North Dakota, Senator CONRAD, deserves the thanks and respect from everybody here for the detail, for the arduous task that he followed to make sure that the budgets were clear. And no matter how often the challenges came, Senator CONRAD would stand up and give the background and give the details that got him to a point of view, and we're grateful and will certainly miss his presence here. Mr. President, the budget the Republicans have come forward that confirms their true priorities. I had a good business career, Mr. President, before coming to the Senate, and I remember during the Second World War, we raised taxes on high incomes, on excess profits, because the country needed the revenues. They needed to make investments. And the budget that the Republicans have put forward today, again, confirms their true priorities. What are they, Mr. President? They really are pushing, working hard to make sure that people who make millions can get tax breaks. It's a little hard to understand why it is that with the shortages that we have in being able to invest in important programs, that we're worried about those who make more than $1 million a year. I've had a good business career, Mr. President, and I want to make sure our country is strong, and I want to make sure my contribution is included among those who should be paying. What they don't seem to care about in their budgeting, seniors, children, middle-class Americans, at a time when our economy is fighting against strong headwinds and too many Americans are out of work, the Republicans are offering the same old prescriptions: tax cuts for the rich and austerity for everyone else. Now, I've seen this country of ours through adversity many times, and I've seen it come out stronger on the other side. But our recoveries have never been spurred by starving the middle class while giving tax breaks to the wealthy. Prosperity has never trickled down from the wealthy few. Prosperity has always grown up from a broad middle class. You can't build a building starting with a chimney, and you can't build a society's strength by starting from the top. It has to have a foundation at the bottom that's strength and has the ability to support the needs of our total society. But a strong middle class depends on a first-rate educational system. And forgive the personal annotation here for a moment more. When I got out of the Army, I was a high school graduate. I enlisted when I was 18, and I was lucky. I was able to get an education paid for by the government. I was one of 8 million soldiers, service people, who got their education paid for by virtue of the fact that they served in the military. As a result, half of those who were in uniform, 16 million, 8 million of them got a college education. And I can tell you, Mr. President, that it enabled me, working with 2 colleagues, to start a company that the 3 of us founded, a company that took years and years to build. Slowly and energetically, it began to develop. Today, that company is the company that produces the labor statistics every month for the country, for the worldwide knowledge of what's happening with working people, what the wages are, what the employment is like. ADP, that's the company. We have 50,000 employees now. 50,000 employees, 3 poor boys, nothing going for them except the willingness to work hard. And that's the value. And what did we get? It was determined that that was the greatest generation. Why? Why? Because the education was given to so many who could learn but didn't have the ability to get to college. What we need is a society with affordable and accessible health care, and a tax system where everyone pays their fair share. The Republican budgets include vicious cuts to the middle class. And just look at what they do to education. It slashes funding for education by $19 billion. Saying now, when we desperately need the skills and the knowledge that education brings and the opportunity for invention and creation, take away $19 billion. That's not going to help us get out of the hole that we're in. The Ryan budget would cut the education. That's a budget coming over from the House, as I point out to you, $19 billion. Now, they don't want you to see the specific programs that they'd cut, but let's look at the devastating consequences if their cuts were distributed evenly. I don't know whether Head Start is a familiar operation in our country, but it's one of the most valuable. There are, I believe, about 2 million children who are on the program. And look at this face of a child looking through a narrow prism. There are 200,000 of these children would be told to stay home. There's no room for you. We can't afford to pay for you. So the fact that you're learning, and you're learning what the children, I went recently to a Head Start school in New Jersey, and I met the children. And I'm such a professional grandfather that all little kids look beautiful to me. And I met the children, and what they were learning was that learning is fun. Words mean something. Pictures mean something. And they were prepared, when they got to kindergarten or first grade, they were prepared to say, learning is good. I met a child there. They lined up to greet me, and this is a school that is bilingual. And I said, what is your name? The little boy standing in front of me said, my name is Julio. So I put my hand out to shake his hand, and he pushed it aside, and instead he wrapped his arms around my legs and gave me a hug. And all the little kids that followed thought he was the leader, so they all gave me hugs. It was one of the best days that I've had, to see what happens when you treat these little kids to an opportunity to learn. Imagine slashing funding for a program that will help children learn how to learn. These cuts are short-sighted. They're cruel. 10 million college students could see their Pell Grants cut by more than $1,000 in 2014. Very painful. With less support and rising costs for higher education, young people would be forced to take on more debt in order to attend college because we see college tuitions going up rapidly across the country. The Republican budgets address student debt, too. They would let the interest rate on the new student loans double up, increase by twice. It's an outrage. Why are Republicans putting obstacles in front of young people seeking an education? I never would have been able to attend, as I said, Columbia University without that government help for me and the services that ADP provides. It enabled me to co-found one of America's most successful companies, and the investment in this country that we made when we came home from World War II helped to create the momentum and the direction for this country and decades of prosperity. But instead of offering a helping hand to this generation of students, the Republican proposal closed the door in their face. Government investments in science, technology, and medical research cut by more than $100 billion over the next 10 years. Medical research funding alone could take a hit of nearly $6 billion by 2014. What does that do, Mr. President? It delays research on new diseases, on new treatments, rather, for diseases like cancer, childhood asthma, and juvenile diabetes. Imagine telling a parent of a sick child that we just couldn't help find the money to help him get back with his friends out in the play yard or the schoolroom, going to school on a regular basis. Is that where America wants to be? Mr. President, right now we're finding across the country that there is a greater likelihood that autism will enter into a family's difficulties with a child being born with autism. How can we say no when we see, just in my state alone, that 1 out of 59 male children is born autistic? That's a plague. That's a terrible, terrible position. And then we want to talk about cutting back on health care, on health research. The Republican budget, instead of helping seniors retire with dignity, Republicans have proposed to end Medicare as we know it, giving seniors a voucher instead of guaranteed care. If that voucher can't cover the cost of needed medical services, Republicans say, hey, too bad, you're on your own. We've heard comments from them saying, well, so what if you're poor? Doesn't matter. I look at this chart. We say Medicare, as we know it, gets cut to provide tax cuts for the wealthy. They want to say to people who need the care, who are fortunate enough now under present conditions to be able to have long-term care with a disease that is long care, terminal. The Republican plan would also cut Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is a program for those less able to provide for themselves because of low income or no income. Republican plans will also want to cut that by more than $800 billion over 10 years. Medicaid provides vital resources like pregnancy services for expectant mothers and nursing home care for seniors. We created Medicare and Medicaid because it was decided in this country as a society that we have to be there for seniors and the poor when they get sick. But now the Republicans are proposing to break that promise. They seem to do it without shame. Republicans aren't even exempting the hungry from their cuts. They would eliminate food stamps for up to 10 million Americans over the next decade. In their obsession with austerity, they cut through far more than the fat in the budget. They cut into the bone. Now, many on the other side, and I don't say all, a lot of people on the other side, good people, concerned about their constituents, concerned about what happened. But many on that side say balancing the budget is the mission, the only mission. And in order to do it, they want to make sure that that includes a high priority for tax breaks for the millionaires. We could reduce our deficit if we required the wealthiest among us to pay at least the same tax rate as middle-class Americans on all of their income. But instead, a Republican budget would give millionaires an average tax cut of almost $400,000 a year. Their plan shreds the safety net for seniors and the poor while padding the mattress for the rich. And I ask my colleagues, please get your priorities straight. America needs your help across the board. Your families, your neighbors, your state all need your help. Millionaires don't need more tax cuts, and they certainly shouldn't get them at the expense of our seniors, children, and the middle class. And with that, I yield the floor.
Thank the Senator. Senator Alexander is next. I wonder if we could enter into a quick time agreement